Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Hey, this is an important conversation, I feel like, especially for the ones who are born in, because they never really got to learn what a healthy sex life is. So it's something that we do really need to talk about. There's so much guilt and shame attached with sex, while sex is something completely natural, beautiful, and healthy if done right. So I think we have to have a conversation about this a little bit. Luckily, I feel like for me, because I was born in Europe, it's a little bit more open and not as prudish how I was brought up. Nudity, for example, is just not that big of a deal. I remember when I first moved here to the States, my friend saw her mom in a bra and she came running like, oh my gosh, I saw my mom in a bra. And this occurrence has happened several times, and to me it was like, man, I could walk in on my mom naked and no one would even bat an eye. It's just a little bit different culturally, but I do think that because it was a little bit more open, you are a little bit freer and not inhibited. That same friend later on, when she got married, I felt kind of sad for her because she was excited. She had met a nice brother, but sex is such a tough subject in the organization, and I do think they attach a lot of shame and guilt to it, and she was just absolutely terrified to have sex for the first time on her wedding night, and it broke my heart for her, like, you're missing out, and also for him because he's kind of waited his whole life. He was like 35. He was definitely one of those guys who waited. I guarantee you he's not one of those people who ever strayed from the book. And so for them, it was going to be a tense situation, which should have been a very exciting night, like a fun and beautiful night. So my tip to her was, because people don't talk about these things and it's not wrong, it's not shameful, I said to her, listen, drink a little champagne and start making out. That way you get everything activated, and that way you kind of loosen up, and then it'll just happen naturally without you worrying about anything. Because that's not the point of, like, it's supposed to be thrilling. You know, isn't it so much better for two people who are in love to tear their clothes off and can't wait for this night than to be dreading it and terrified? But part of that reason is because she just hadn't been educated enough on this subject. And also, I think that sex ed in Europe, sex is science. It should be part of science. I do not understand why I have to fill out notes if it's okay that my kids learn about healthy sex. I never understood that. In Europe, we had sex ed integrated in science class, and nobody asked the parents. It was just part of the curriculum. And guess what? We knew everything about birth control. I don't understand why it's such a terrible thing to know about birth control. You can choose what's right and wrong for you. You can have your opinion, but learning is just knowledge. It's just knowing what's out there. And we were so deeply educated that I did not ever think anything of like, how do you not get pregnant? Or I knew that if you are sexually active, there's a chance to get pregnant unless you take precautions. Now, the J-dubs take a lot of birth control away from us with other rules and regulations, but the education system taught me what's out there intensively. And I do think that people should know. It's not like it's saying, oh, it's okay for you to sleep around when I'm teaching you about sex. It doesn't mean that at all. It's kind of like if you learn how to put gauze on or a Band-Aid, it doesn't mean that you have to go cut yourself to try it out. I don't know if that's a good example or not. I'm just saying knowledge is power. Just because you know how to use something appropriately doesn't mean that you have to go do it right away. It's just knowing how to in case. And so for me, I was just a little bit freer, and I'm okay to talk about it. I think there's a big difference between talking about sex scientifically and talking about sex in an intimate way. I'm going to spill the beans on intimate details, but as a scientific thing, it's no problem. And I've been like this with my children my whole life. If they had a question, I would tell them. If they had questions, I would look up a scientific sketch of things and show them. For example, they asked me what it looks like to be circumcised and not circumcised. I pulled up a scientific sketch for it. This is a penis circumcised. This is a penis not circumcised. And the back thought of this too is like, isn't it better to learn about sex in a healthy way than for them never to know anything about it, never talk about it, and then learn through porn? Like, that is unhealthy, because real sex between two people is not how porn shows it. So in order to avoid for the kids to learn about sex in an unhealthy way, I just chose to be open with them and teach them the way that I feel like is healthy. And it's not this bad thing. If you guys are from the MTV generation, I loved MTV. Remember the It's Your Sex Life? They had that on TV all the time. And maybe that also was ingrained in my head. It's your sex life, right? And so this is what we, even when we have to leave, have to learn. It is your sex life. The main thing that is really important is that you don't hurt others. So cheating, I do not condone that at all. I think the sex industry, there's a lot of abuse toward women and misogyny going on, and the sex trade and everything. So I do not support pornography for those reasons and many other reasons, because I think that pornography prevents people to have healthy sexual relationships. Whole other topic though. But I just think that a lot of people growing up in this religion and other religions too have shame and guilt attached. And we're going to try to work through this, because it is your sex life. What you choose to do is your business. For me personally, I want to be in love and love the person and trust them. That's me. But whatever you choose to do, just make sure you do not hurt other people and that you're safe. That you aren't exposed to diseases, but it is your sex life. So I'm going to mind my own business and let people be what they choose to be. And I think people want to impose their beliefs and things on other people. And it's important that we don't do that. You can learn things and say things, but it's going to be on you to choose not to do that. My conscience does not allow me to do that. That's fine. Don't do it. Don't impose it on other people. So it's a big thing that we have to get used to, because even though we learned, you shall not judge, for some reason the Jehovah's Witnesses ended up being the most judgmental people ever. They judge everything. And see, with homosexuality, I liked when they used to not say a lot on the topic. They would say, we would treat them kindly. And, if you see someone smoke, you would say, I wouldn't smoke, but I wouldn't judge the person for smoking. And it's just I won't do that. And so I grew up having gay friends, our neighbors were gay on 2 occasions. They were the most kindest, helpful people. Where the congregation didn't show up, our neighbors were there and told us, we will always be here for you. They were awesome. So I always learned, don't be judgmental of how people choose their lifestyle. And I really didn't think anything of it when someone was gay. It's that's their business. And so it was actually at the convention where they had, they started playing the drama movies, and they had the anti-gay movie, and I hated it. It felt like propaganda to me. I talked about this in the previous episode, because to me, all those videos they started playing were not about learning Bible truths anymore. It felt like they're trying to appeal to your emotions. It felt like propaganda. And I hated the anti-gay video that they showed, especially since it was right after the Pulse shooting. And it was like the same year or the year after that they had that. And I'm like, how dare you guys? This is such a, it's like promoting hate toward people. It's so wrong. And I was sitting there with my kids, and I said, we would not do this. This is not feeling right. Aren't we supposed to be kind to everyone? That's the message. I don't know. That's just the message that I always got. Be kind to people. To me, being a follower of Jesus meant being kind. That's the message I took away from it. And then I saw all these people around me not taking the same message away, being haughty. How many times did I hang with witnesses where they were so superior in their titles that they wouldn't even acknowledge you or have 2 minutes to have a conversation with you? They just ignored you. That felt so wrong to me. I'm like, you're not being kind. And so I already always felt like this as a witness. Just be nice to everybody. This is the bottom line. Be nice. And sometimes to this day, I have to check myself with some things, because we were raised to be judgmental. We were raised to check these little things off in our mind immediately. What's okay as a Jehovah's Witness and what's not. So if someone wasn't at a meeting for a while and they bring the old Bible, immediately your brain registers, they haven't been to the meeting in a long time. That's what the cult does to you on purpose, though. So if someone's wearing a too short of skirt, your brain registers is because we're groomed to be like this. And meanwhile, there's no rule on skirt lengths. There's no rule on what Bible you can use in the Bible. Show me the scripture. I really want to go back to all of this. Show me the scripture. And so when we talk about sex, show me the scripture. And one of the biggest things that J-dubs love to harp on is masturbation. Show me the scripture. There is none. There is a scripture where he wasted his semen, but that's really not about masturbation. It's about him being vindictive and didn't want to get his wife pregnant so she would have offspring, but it really didn't have anything to do with him masturbating. It never says in the Bible, do not masturbate. And if it mattered that much, wouldn't it be a part of the 10 commandments, which kind of gets me off on a whole nother subject, why isn't rape and pedophilia included in the 10 commandments? That's a whole different discussion, though. But the Jehovah's Witnesses love to harp on things like masturbation. And they love to give the talks about masturbation to teenage boys. It's like public humiliation. So one of my buddies, he, of course, got the talk on masturbation, and he was shy, and it just killed him, and I felt so uncomfortable for him. I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor kid. It's this public shaming, and the elder who was kind of snickering in the back, he thought it was hilarious, and I'm like, this is just so rude. He's going through his sexual teenage years, and you give him this talk. It's so rude. Well, there was one guy in my old hall who really, quote unquote, struggled with masturbating. He couldn't not do it because it's healthy and normal, but he ended up being thrown into such a deep depression where it really spiraled him because he couldn't stop masturbating. He had a lot of hormones and he felt such shame and guilt. So one day, all the teenage boys are standing outside with this elder from the congregation, and the elder says to all these teenage boys, everybody masturbates. It's normal. Every guy masturbates. It's just fine. And how unhealthy that message though is if you keep people in the religion, because that's double talk. You just came from the meeting where they condemn masturbation as an unclean habit, But then you go outside into the parking lot and this elder tells you, you're fine, don't even worry about it. Those kind of things create something in you that's psychologically so unhealthy because you're now holding on to two different beliefs. It's double talk, but it's also cognitive dissonance. And it ends up making people sick because you cannot hold two beliefs at the same time that are are in contradiction of themselves. So I just felt like, yeah, the elder was totally right. And he's probably, just trying to encourage these poor guys because they're feeling so guilty about this. But at the same time, then you need to stop preaching it from the platform. You can't do that. And if you look into it, like masturbation, it releases so many things for especially men, for women. It's healthy. It's okay. Stop feeling shame. It's okay. It's your sex life. It is not concerning of anyone. And if you think about how like the J-dubs impose on people's sex life and promote singleness so that they have like all these, especially bachelor workers that come work for free for them, but then they promote singleness, aka they promote no sex, and then you can't even masturbate. So you're just repressing your sexuality all the time. It's no different than like being a priest and being celibate. It is no different. And it's so unhealthy because God created, if you believe in God, he created sex as a form to enjoy between people. And there's plenty of scriptures to back that up. Rejoice in the breasts of the wife of your youth. Like, give me a break. Go have fun. You're fine. Enjoy your sex life. Don't feel guilty about it. Be healthy about it, but don't feel guilt and shame about it. It's no one's business but yours. So there was one couple in our hall, and I gotta, this is a funny story, but I don't even know where he got this from. It's not really, there's a lot of J-dub rules that are unwritten and end up like being in gossip and stuff, but are not, you can't find them in the publications. It's kind of cultural, So this brother worked at a mechanic shop with other guys who nobody else was a Jehovah's Witness. They were just guys. And they had like a porn magazine that they were looking at. And the brother went over and he took the magazine from them. And he's like, you guys shouldn't be reading this smut. We need to throw this out. And he started telling these not Jehovah's Witnesses off. Where I'm like laughing when I heard the story. And he's like, you guys shouldn't be reading this. And then plus all these people are doing positions that aren't approved from God. God only allows the missionary position. And the dudes were like laughing so hard at him. And it's just like, I heard that story and I'm like, what? Where did you get that from? God only allows the missionary position. Like, I do not know if his wife told him that because that's all she wanted. Like, where is this coming from? And it like these dudes are like, wow, these people are crazy. Like, only the missionary position. Show me the scripture on that. You're fine. You can do it however you want to. It is okay. And that is just ridiculous. So my mom, she said that years ago, she was visiting a friend of her whose husband had faded. And he was reading Crisis of Conscience. And he had it on their living room table. Funny story. And my mom, she was like, oh, there's that book. Because that book, people talked about it. People talked about it at the time. Like, I had never heard of it, but they talked about it. It was a big deal when Ray France left. And so mom said she kind of opened it. She was such a little rebel because she dared to open the apostate book. And she opened it to a page where people had written into the society all their sex questions. Is it okay if we do this? Is it okay if we do that? And my mom said she read it and she's like, God, people are so stupid. There's no scripture. Follow your conscience. It's not up for the society to decide if you can be on top. It's not for the society to decide that. You just do your own thing, and there is no scripture on it. Why are these people so dumb and write this in? So she said that she thought the book was kind of like, oh, this is so goofy because why are people even like this? You don't write in questions that they can't answer when it's not in the Bible. And so she left it at that and didn't think anything of it. And she's like, in hindsight, I wish I would have opened like a different chapter that would have appealed to me personally more, like the Malawi situation, that would have really like gotten her to think. But what she read, she's like, oh, people, stop. Like, you just need to follow your own conscience. Our family was like, if it's not in the Bible, it's not a rule. Hence, that's why I was able to go to prom. Show me the scripture that says you can't go to prom, So they were like, you're fine. You can go get a pretty dress. Thank God for them. But I do think how they thought also helped us wake up, because there's a lot of conflict between scripture and Watchtower policy that did not correlate. So I think it helped us, especially in the latter years now with the governing body seeking so much prominence. My mom was convinced they were apostate. She's like, it says in later years, some will fall away from the faith and like they will infiltrate and she's like, they will infiltrate God's people and stuff. Mom's like, that's the governing body, because what they're doing, like suddenly they're on TV. She hated that they put the TVs everywhere, that they showed movies. She hated all of that. She's like, Bible in hand, learn from the scripture. So thank God for that, right? So I wasn't even raised with like any like sexual inhibitions, or it wasn't this big taboo. If I had a birth control question, I would call my dad, my mom. I'm like, what can we do? What can we not do? We talked about it openly. It was no problem. And I do think it's healthy, like, for everyone to have a person like that in life, because it's part of your life. Sometimes you have to, learn things in order to do them right. And, especially between men and women, we're not the same. So there's some things that we can learn that we don't know by talking. And in a scientific way, you don't have to go intimate. You don't have to go like, we do this and do this, but like, this isn't really working. What can I do? It's okay. You're fine. It's nobody's business to make you feel shame and guilt. You're okay to be happy and healthy. I'm going to end the episode here for today. I'm going to make a part 2 for this because there's a few other things I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions or any things you want me to talk about or discuss in tomorrow's episode, drop me a comment, or you can always email me at rayleighfrance@gmail.com. I'm here for you guys. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm like playing Dr. Ruth today, Dr. Rayleigh Ruth. And at the end of the day, all we need is love, and all that everybody deserves is to be happy. So as long as everybody is happy, that is what matters. And I also think when I say, it's important that you don't hurt other people, I mean people that you're in a relationship with. I don't mean like, oh, my parents are still Jehovah's Witnesses and they're hurt because I choose to have sex. That's not what I mean. I mean things like cheating or other things that violate relationships or, your sexual health. That's really what I mean, just to clarify. But drop me a comment if you have any questions. I want to be here for you. Have a great night. Bye.